we will see what we can do. Oh, there we go. Got it. We are live to YouTube. Fantastic. Thank you for making that work, Kirsten. And thank you everybody for joining us today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen actually, and we'll hop right into the agenda. So I just wanted to welcome everybody to today's Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee meeting and kick things off with some remarks. So last week, we wrapped up the first round of gathering public input for Lewisboro's comprehensive plan update. And on behalf of the entire steering committee, I have a lot of gratitude to share. So much great work, time and effort went into making this all happen. And it's important to remember we're just getting started here. We still have 2 rounds of public meetings and feedback collection to go. So to the members of the Lewisboro community who participated in the first round, whether it was by attending the in-person workshop, the virtual meetings, or taking the online survey, thank you so much. Your input and your participation is what this process is really all about. So to the outreach teams, including the chairs and the co-chairs, all of you volunteering your time to help spread the word about the public meetings, thank you. Making the public engagement and outreach for this project as inclusive and wide-reaching as possible is no small task. And we cannot do it without you, the volunteers. So thank you, thank you, thank you. To my fellow steering committee members, you have been volunteering your time for almost 2 full years now. And thank you so much for that. All of the time, the effort, researching, learning, and working hard to make this process as efficient, inclusive, and wide-reaching as possible. I'm really proud of the process that we have built to engage the community together, a process that is aligned with our mission, which is to make sure everyone has a fair and equal opportunity to participate and share their input in this comprehensive plan update process. To the chairs of the Planning Board, the Zoning Board, and ACARC, thank you for your participation in so many of our meetings and this process. We appreciate your insight and your feedback. And to our town board liaisons, thank you for your participation in our monthly meetings and your insight and your feedback along the way. And so the town board is ultimately the body that will adopt and implement this new comprehensive plan. So to our liaisons, we will be asking you to help us get the full town board more involved going forward. Up till now, we've been putting the information associated with the project, the public outreach and the public input out there, and we've been sharing it, but we haven't been engaging the full board directly, with the exception of our quarterly updates. We've been focusing our active shareholder engagement efforts elsewhere, and we've been trusting that if the board had questions, concerns, or recommendations for the process, that the board would reach out to us. So going forward, we will be making a concerted effort to engage the full town board directly and make sure that everyone is committed to an understanding of the full process. So I have one more note of gratitude. Thank you for Valerie and your team at Nelson Pope Voorhees. You guys have been working hard to translate all of the input from the Lewisboro community into actionable goals and opportunities for the future of Lewisboro, and we really appreciate that. So for tonight's meeting, I'd like to set the stage here. This is a really important moment in the process for us to pause and evaluate, and I want to be really clear about this. The reason that we evaluate is to figure out where we can adjust or improve the process. So we need to answer 2 questions. 1, are we doing everything we can to reach out to the Lewisboro community, let them know about events, and communicate the importance of their engagement in the process? And number 2, are we doing so within the project budget? We can control the answer to these questions, but what we can't control is the outcome, which is the number of people who actually participate. So tonight we have 2, actually I should say following the first round of public meetings, there are 2 separate items for us to evaluate specifically. So first, there's the community feedback on their experiences from the first set of meetings. In other words, what can Valerie and her team do to make the meetings, the workshops, and the survey more clear and engaging for attendees and participants? And thank you so much to the members of the community who proactively shared their feedback. And thank you to Andrea for sharing feedback that she'd heard from community members as well. We have shared all of this with Valerie and her team, and we will revisit that at a later meeting when we're closer to the next round of meetings and workshops. So the second item for us to evaluate, and this is what we're going to focus on tonight, is the ongoing community outreach and engagement effort. So again, we need to answer those two questions. Are we doing everything we can to reach the Lewisboro community and communicate the importance of this project and their engagement in the process? And two, are we doing so within our budget? So tonight, let's explore those questions and plan for the next round of public meetings accordingly. We do have a packed agenda tonight, and we're a few minutes behind. So we have some important choices to consider. So I just want to give everybody a heads up ahead of time. I will be strict about keeping us on the agenda topic. So if I pause you and ask you to hold a question or comment until the related portion of the agenda, please know it is in service of a more efficient meeting. So thank you so much for that, everyone. With that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Valerie for the first agenda item, which is a summary of our participation figures from round one and some comparative comments that will help us put that in context. Over to you, Valerie.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Can everyone see this?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So what we did is we took a look at, so just for comparison's sake, we took a look at our most recent comprehensive plans that we did over the last few years. And what I provided here was the communities, the total population of each one of those communities, total participation throughout their comprehensive plan process, and the percent of the total population. So what I wanted to note to start off with is Lewisboro to date has 353 people participate in the round one workshops. I'm not including the public participation survey because while it was associated with the comprehensive plan, it was really focused on public outreach as opposed to input into the comprehensive plan itself. So right now, the town of Lewisboro has approximately 2.8% of its population has already weighed in on the comprehensive plan process. When you compare it to other communities, especially looking at the total amount of population that participated throughout the comprehensive plans, the town of Lewisboro is in a very good position right now. And a couple of things I just wanted to note. So if you look at, for example, the town of Carmel, which had about 3.8% of its population provide input, village of Haverstraw, which was 2.6%, town of Poughkeepsie was about 1.8%, and the town of Montgomery was about 3.1%. Those were all communities in which, while there was a lot of outreach done amongst the communities, the comprehensive plans themselves, the community was in support with what was taking place in the comprehensive plan. So, for example, in areas where the community really wanted focus on certain elements, those elements were being addressed. And so as the public tended to, see feedback, see what was going through the process, they tended at that point to not have as many people attend some of those meetings. In some communities, like, for example, the town of Austin, the village of Chestnut Ridge, they had upwards to close to 10% population, 10% of the population participate. And both of those communities, I can tell you for a fact, the town of Austin had their last comprehensive plan. There was an update done, and it involved a couple of properties. And there was a lot of concern that those properties were going to still be targeted for development. And so there were a lot of people at the very beginning of the process that really came out, and because they were very concerned about the types of development and those particular properties. And as the process continued, and they realized that those more controversial aspects were not being brought into the comprehensive plan, we had people kind of drop off in terms of overall participation. The village of Chestnut Ridge, they also are experiencing a lot of demographic, ethnic changes within their community. And because of that, there are a lot of issues that they're dealing with. And that caused a very robust outpour in terms of comments as well as public feedback throughout the comprehensive plan process. So for right now, from what I have seen so far in the town of Lewisboro, there are a lot of initiatives, there's a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of concepts that are being put forth. But I will say, to a larger extent, we definitely sent out, I would say that the town of Lewisboro and your public outreach teams did a tremendous job in terms of getting the word out there. And of course, we can always adjust and we can always do more. But I think in terms of other communities, the town of Lewisboro actually did like much more than other communities tend to. But I do think that because there was so much outreach and there was so much attention given, and as well as, for example, the public surveys, as well as we posted ahead of time what was going to be discussed, some people might have decided that, that they reviewed the information and were okay with what was being identified, or decided this particular round they were not going to engage in, and maybe next round they might engage in when we're going to focus on like the hamlet areas or more specific goals and objectives. So, unfortunately, when you're dealing with a lot of this public outreach, the best the community can do is make sure that they're hitting up every possible avenue in terms of media, promotion, as well as giving people different opportunities to weigh in if they choose to. But I do think the town of Lewisboro is in a good position to continue getting public feedback, as well as continuously potentially increase their overall public participation.
So one clarification before I go to Charlene, I see she has a question. The 353 number, virtual meetings, in-person workshop, and the round
Public
one meeting survey. And this is round one of 3 rounds of input. So we're already at 2.8 now, and who knows where we go from here.
That's correct.
Okay, Charlene?
Going with that, is Carmel, all these other towns, this is a complete after the project was done?
That's correct.
Okay, so
you're close, you're already beating a couple different communities, and you're close to also achieving more than a few other communities as well.
Does anybody else have reactions to that? Andrea, Dan, I would love to hear what you think, because I know that this was a question at the last board meeting and it wasn't specifically addressed. So I hope this gives you some helpful context.
Yes, I think one of our fellow town board members, Mr. Sclaren, was asking a specific question. So this will be helpful in his evaluation to see the comparison between, because his concern was, how are we doing in comparison to other communities? Are we average? Are we below average in participation? So this is a good reflection and good information to give back to the town board so that we know where we are at this point.
Right. And I just want to note, and I'm not saying, a lot of times in communities, what really drives participation in public events or public meetings is when there is something controversial on the table or something of large importance to a particular community. And so right now, the first round was just general feedback of what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities are. We might get more people attending once we now start putting out the draft goals, but it's also possible once we put out draft goals, objectives, and visions that people feel comfortable with what is being proposed. And at that point, you might get, the same amount of people still participating, but we're going to make sure that there's many different options for people to participate and weigh in. But I tend to find that when people feel comfortable with what is being proposed, sometimes you don't get as much of a robust showing as you do when there's a very controversial issue at hand.
Yeah, so to that point, I just wanted to quickly share, we asked the town clerk's office for data. Average 2022 attendance at Lewisboro board meetings was over Zoom 18, and then an additional 8 people in person. And I said, oh, okay, well, what about like when there's a hot topic or something controversial, as we're talking about on the agenda? So we can see during 2020, there was record attendance. Partially that was because of the pandemic situation and everyone being available to join by YouTube, by Zoom. The best participation the town board saw was in July 2020, and that got 230 people on Zoom. That was the highest by a lot. The second highest meeting after that was May 2020 with 138. The rest of them ranged between 22 and 138 during 2020, excuse me. So that's kind of useful too, just to tell you here in our community, when people come out, this is what it looks like. So Dan, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had something you wanted to add.
I think those numbers are heartening and a reflection of the hard work that's been done. And there's still a heck of a lot more work to do. And it doesn't tell us sort of where everybody is on everything, but it's a great marker.
Great.
I do have a question. The numbers, the percentages, with each phase of the participation, and I don't know if we're able to do this, does it reflect the different, how do we know when the same people are participating versus more people or different people are participating? Is there any way to gauge that?
So to answer your question, it's difficult to gauge that. I mean, besides some sign-in sheets, we're not necessarily even asking people to identify themselves over, on the online survey. I mean, we can look at, IPN numbers, but, for the most part, I mean, I guess to some extent, we do want people to continue to participate throughout. So we do hope that we continue getting the numbers that we are. So if we do see an increase, then the assumption is that clearly we're bringing in new people to participate. But if we see the same numbers, there could be an assumption made that, the same number or the same amount of people are participating. I will say, for example, we've been sending out on the Constant Contact web blast to over 600 different individual emails. And we even sent out as part of that to remind people of the public survey. And yet we still only got 100 and some odd people responding to the public survey. Although that's a very good number in terms of people wanting to participate, it just gives you an example of, we did send out to 600 different, individual email addresses. And even if you combine, you assumed everybody on those email addresses all participated somewhere along the line, you still had 50% of people that didn't participate. So it's really hard to, you can do as much as you're doing, but really at the end of the day, people have to want to participate.
Okay, so to keep us moving, before we move on to project planning, any specific questions about those comparative numbers or the numbers from the town board meetings? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the discussion of project planning. So it's great. We need to evaluate, as I said, are we doing everything we can? And we can't control the outcomes, those numbers of who's participating, but we certainly can control the process and how that influences those outcome numbers. So that's what we're going to do now. What we need to dive into is thinking about the project schedule specifically. So I will share this document, and I know Jan requested I make this a little bigger. Let me see. Why it's not easier for me. All right, I'll do that as we go. So this is the current schedule. And as everybody knows, we've had an aggressive schedule from the beginning. Expanding the schedule doesn't mean expanding the budget, because the scope of work will stay the same. It'll just be stretched over multiple months. So current schedule would have us forging ahead and starting public meetings right in April. It would be probably towards the end of April, but there would be one public meeting in April, 2 public meetings in May, 2 public meetings in June, and then to avoid getting into the heart of the summer, we would be skipping to September, where we would have 2 public meetings then. And just a reminder to everybody, we're going to come to the format of those meetings. How many, virtual, in person, all that good stuff later in the agenda. But first, we need to get consensus on how fast we're moving and when those meetings are happening, because that influences the entire conversation thereafter.
Right. And Katie, just as a note, that the reason those public meetings have 2 in each month, this is assuming that the board wants to, the committee wants to continue moving forward with having only 1 meeting on 1 day, as
Right.
opposed to doubling up meetings.
Okay, good to know. So then we would, if we stuck to that aggressive schedule, then we would be able to have comments from the second round of meetings in October, and have revised goals and objectives to share with the various boards to get comments ready in November and December. That's what we were planning on before. But in thinking about how fast that moves and how much space we have to really pause and ramp up our outreach and dig in and do additional outreach and work with the town board a little bit more directly, we're thinking there's a second option. And Valerie put together this revised schedule. I added some notes to it. So if we revise the schedule, then we would use April and May and the summer to do increased outreach, more along the lines of what is a comprehensive plan? Why are we updating it? What's happened so far? How can you get involved? We would have more space to engage directly with the town board and maybe some of the other committees. And then we would avoid having meetings in public meetings in the summer as well. So then we could launch in and start in September, November, October, in that fall space, have our public meetings. And then what it would do is push the end point of round 2 to early 2024, into January, February, instead of the end of 2023. So obviously those are 2 ends of the spectrum. There's lots of different combinations that we can talk about, but I think a good place to start is just to kind of discuss first with the steering committee members, just thoughts about at least pushing the schedule in a way that the endpoint of round 2 becomes January, February, 2024. And that the public meetings are more congregated towards the fall.
Right. And just to note, so if you choose to undertake the public meetings in the fall, we would still have different documents being released throughout these number of months, which would include the inventory and analysis report. It would also include draft vision, draft goals, and draft objectives. So it wouldn't be that there would be no information that was being put out to the public between, the spring and the fall.
Yeah, that's a good point. There will be lots of documents for the public to engage with. Inventory and analysis report, draft goals, draft vision, and the raw data, all the raw comments and videos from the first round of public meetings. So there's a lot for folks to dig into. Let's start with committee members. Initial reactions and thoughts on those 2 general options of scheduling. Charlene?
I'm leaning towards extending the time, to tell you the truth, so that everybody always has complaints about something, and as the board members know well. But extending the time, I believe that would give us more outreach time, more time for the residents to digest the information, more time to question. So that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, thank you. Larry?
I disagree with Charlene's point of view, respectfully. I feel like we have very good momentum. I know I'm involved with many civic organizations. And if I haven't spoken out directly about the comp plan at meetings and gatherings, it's been in newsletters and email blasts. Anecdotally, just from talking to different people around town, I feel like there is people know what the town is working on, what we're working on, and they are engaged as much as they can be, from what I've heard. And many people, are not available on, a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon. So we should consider our meeting times, but I feel like we have very good momentum. And I feel like if we pull back and wait until the fall, the residents are going to question what the committee and what the town is doing and why we're changing our schedule when we've publicized the schedule already. And I do feel like if we pull back, we're going to lose some of that momentum. And the people who wanted to participate in the first meeting who weren't able to, they're going to forget about it, move on to other things. And I feel like if we can keep up the schedule, which is an extended schedule for most of the rest of the year, that we have plenty of time to outreach to the different community groups and capture those people who haven't been involved so far. So I think we should stick to a schedule and a timeline as best as we can, and try to move through the process. We're updating the comprehensive plan that hasn't been updated in a long time. But there is, at this point, there's nothing groundbreaking that's been proposed. And I guess depending on what residents and people who work and live in Lewisboro want to see in the comp plan, that may change. But at this point, I think we should be moving forward as quickly as possible and try to stick to our original schedule.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Mark?
Yeah, I don't have anything earth-shattering to advise on, just to both really echo Charlene and Larry. I guess I'm taking a middle ground here, but I'm looking at the long game and realizing that as long as we feel that sort of due process and public engagement standards have been met, and I'm leaning on Valerie to help us reflect on that, and I think those statistics were helpful. For where I sit, I think we've been really robust and vigorous about engaging public input in in-person virtual meetings and through proxy organizations, and a very well-attended, I think a terrifically well-attended event we had at the high school. So should be no surprise to the community. I do, appreciate advancing the momentum on this. I feel that while I defer towards due process and making sure everybody's heard, at the same time, I feel like we're not advancing anything new. There is, like Larry was mentioning, that we're talking about sewer districts like Bedford's doing, or commandeering the high school to turn it into an airport. And frankly, we haven't advanced anything ambitious or unique or clearly defined at this point that anyone would be objecting to. So I guess I'd like to preserve the opportunity to extend the time period for comment once we have a document that we're trying to vet and have the town board digest and see comment on, but we're not even at that point. So I'm not quite sure we'd want to slow down thinking it through, because the public hasn't even had a document for which we're seeking comment in yet. And that may be a time, maybe you want to preserve that time in the schedule to allow for additional comment once we have an actionable plan to be reviewed.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So John is not here. He's our other committee member. He's out of the country. My opinion is everybody made really good points. So I'm hearing all of that. Gosh, there's no right answer, which I just hate. I am a fan of extending the schedule personally, because I think we can seize the opportunity to take the momentum that we have and expand on it and get more people pulled into the outreach teams and get more flyers up around town that are informational, and just really sort of make sure that the net is cast as wide and as broad as possible before we start the second round of meetings. And I think we can use the draft goals and the draft vision statement that Valerie and her team are putting together and going to be ready to post in the next couple months. I think we can use that as a document to engage people and start the dialogue going and have, I hear what you're saying, Mark, that we can't just be having theoretical conversations. We need a concrete document, but we will have those draft goals and objectives, and that there's a lot of space for collaborative discussion there. Yeah, so I don't think that we're going to necessarily come up with a firm decision. I think we have a few more minutes if anybody else. Andrea, you want to go?
So I don't see why we have to do all one way or all the other. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to go and have no meetings from now until summer. There's no reason why, just for an example, I'm just throwing it out there, that we do outreach in March, 2 meetings in April, outreach in May, a couple meetings in June, and then postpone, do outreach or information over the summer just to make sure people know we haven't gone away, and pick up in September. Being that a good point that was made by Larry is that we've got momentum. I know that at least 2 of the Hamlet committees are very motivated. They're motivated enough that now they're involved in doing, individual projects in the Hamlets as well as meeting on a regular basis. I don't want to lose that momentum, but I think that we can combine expanding a little longer, but still having meetings, just not every month, twice a month. Maybe we could spread it out that way. And so it's still going on and we're still having meetings and we're still engaging, but we spread it out a little more so that we're finishing in the beginning of the fall. Also with the nice weather. I can only speak for myself, but I would assume this may apply to many others, is that you're more encouraged to be out and participating in things when it's getting dark later, you're feeling more awake at night. On the evenings, on the weekends, you're not dressing, not that we've been very lucky with the winter, but, I think people tend to be more energized and more willing to participate when the weather is cooperating. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. And just point of clarification. So the 2 Hamlet organizations you're referring to, those are Hamlet associations, not necessarily the same as the Lewisboro comp plan community outreach teams.
Correct. They've been working with the outreach teams, or I could say, well, and Golden Spring Hamlet Association is very, very busy, but they also promote participating very much in the comprehensive plan process. The same thing with Vista. We've got people who are very much involved in the outreach and have brought community members together in Vista to talk about the comprehensive plan. And as a result of that, it is now stemmed into taking on a life of its own, but it's motivating people.
Yeah,
that's great. And people are motivated because of the participation and the outreach, and because they're interested in participating. So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's great. And it's fabulous that those entities exist. I just want to make it super clear that they're not directly affiliated with the steering committee. The outreach teams are reporting to the steering committee, but then yes, the Golden Spring Hamlet Association and the new organization in Vista, those are separate entities that will continue to exist outside the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure everyone was crystal clear on that. Okay, Jan. You're on mute.
Thanks. I think some of the points that I was going to make, I think Andrea really made. First of all, I was really encouraged and want to thank Valerie for the comparisons of numbers to what other teams have done. I do feel like we have momentum, and I sort of hate to see that get paused. I think the new piece I hadn't realized is that some documents and some other information will still be going out, and that might actually make some of the other meetings more fruitful or have more to discuss. But I feel, and this is where I really was picking up on Andrea's point, as I was thinking, we tend to have a lot of community organizations that kind of get going in the spring. They start, you start seeing people emerge as if from hibernation almost, but people get more engaged, they get out, they get talking to each other. And there's a lot of excitement that happens in the spring, I think. And if you can add that with the momentum that I think we've already got, there might be some really good opportunities to kind of talk about this. Now, maybe if it's not a meeting, but we can talk about the draft goals and objectives are out there and you can go look at it, or go read the inventory and analysis. I mean, so maybe it doesn't have to be this set of public meetings, but I really feel strongly that we should not go quiet. We should be still, something. So even if it's a meeting or two, I really think I would really hate to see us sort of go away and people say, whatever did happen to that? So that's what I'll just add, I think I'm not sure what the best way to do it is, but I don't want to give the impression that we're delaying in any way.
Sure.
So maybe it's the terminology we're using. So thanks.
Dan?
Yeah, I'll just join in and say that there's a lot of folks who are really chomping at the bit to get into the substance of things, and I think we should just jump on that. So and I would also suggest that maybe we want to plan, but we also want to kind of read things as we go, and I think we should charge into the content, get those vision and goals out there. I'm very interested to see how that discussion is managed, because that's not a simple thing. Even to sort of give some help to people to how to think about vision and goals, and whether are they just for Lewisboro as a whole, or do we also have sort of activities around sub-vision goals for the hamlet centers or something. So charge in there, and then if we need to extend, I would say a very important rule is here that this is like really, really important. We're only doing this once, after 40 years, and if we should do whatever it takes. So let's just charge at it, and if we have to add meetings, and I know you're watching the budget, and that's important, but if we don't want to shortchange here anywhere on this process, this is just too important for that.
Right. So my plan, Dan, then that's really,
Wait, Val, do you mind if I just pause for a sec? That I don't want to take us off in a different direction here. I want to hear what Charlene has to say. Charlene?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is the town board has to vote on the comprehensive plan. And they are also used to dealing with the public's and residences' wants and dislikes and etc. So I think they have to be very, very comfortable with the timeline, because we're just the steering committee. We're just a facilitator for this whole process. So personally, I have my opinions, but I think we should defer to Dan and Andrea and the rest of the board when they talk to the rest of the board members as to the timeline. We have made our suggestions. I think everybody has had a valid point. That's my bottom line.
So
Yeah,
I think
okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think, so a lot of this comes down to the 7 meetings, right? Because technically there is plenty of time to still do outreach, still get everybody, you know what I mean? Like pull together the draft goals and still have time before we hit the summer. The difficulty is when we're trying to identify 7 meetings, which is basically, 7 days, and in between of like spring break week, Memorial Day weekends, you got graduations, so that's where the actual weeks themselves start dropping in options. So we could do some in the spring and then finish them up in the fall. And that's completely, that's a really good option. And in between that time, we could do a public survey that just is stayed open for like 4 months, right? And it basically reflects what the individual Hamlet, discussions are going to be, which are going to focus on the draft goals and objectives. And so we could just keep those open and keep it running. So it just feels like one big, long public outreach time period. And then we conclude in the fall. So that's another option just to consider.
Yeah. I want to pause us here because I don't think we can answer the question. And perhaps once we go through the rest of the agenda items, we'll have more clarity and we can come back and make maybe a option A, option B, option C kind of recommendation for the town board to consider. But I just wanted, just in case, Duff or Kirsten, did you have anything you wanted to add before we move on? Totally okay, no pressure. Okay. So let's really quickly just review the public outreach that has been done to date, and see what's missing, because that's a super important question, because what needs to be done there and how time and labor intensive it is definitely influences where we go from here in terms of the schedule for the meetings. So we can do this quickly. And everybody's had these documents in front of them for over a week now. So, but I did just want to make sure we go through it so the public can see as well. So thinking about when we kicked off the public engagement phase, we started in September and October of 2021 by launching the participation survey. That was an online survey, but paper copies were available by mail, large print. There was an English version and a Spanish version of the survey that had a townwide postcard mailing that had separate QR codes for English and Spanish. We had tables at the library fair, Parks and Rec's Trunk or Treat, October's Parks and Rec New Neighbors event. We did a September project update on YouTube that was advertised via the town and Parks and Rec listserv. We had the flyers posted in each hamlet on Facebook, on our website, the town community weekly email, Parks and Rec's senior newsletter, town clerk email blast, Parks and Rec email blast. So we had 500 participants in that survey. And the options were you can either volunteer to help us with outreach or you can join the mailing list. And that's how our outreach teams were formed. The outreach team, the people who are now the outreach team chairs and co-chairs, they directly or proactively reached out to our steering email address and asked to be leaders. So then we formed the outreach teams and they started to send out save the dates for the January and February meetings. The save the dates started to go out in December. I skipped forward here, but the button on the outreach teams is that there's over 100 volunteers who are on the outreach teams. And there were about 500 people who responded to the survey. So that's where our constant contact email list came from. We've got the participation survey respondents, the 500, including the 100 volunteers. And then we also developed our own stakeholder list by finding publicly available email addresses. This stakeholder list was posted to our website in August 2022, and it had a big request on it. If you see your organization missing, please email us. So the email addresses we pulled from public websites were volunteer organizations, homeowner neighborhood, lake associations, local businesses, school district PTAs, PTOs, and then all the town departments, town committee council, police, fire, and LVAC. So that's how we have the 600 people on our constant contact email list that Valerie referenced. So what we were thinking is that that would be really efficient. The postcard mailer, all the townwide stuff, that would funnel into an email list that would basically be our go-to way of communicating throughout. And what I skipped forward, got ahead of myself here, but the outreach teams and the steering committee, we basically had two phases of advertising for January and February meetings. The one started in December. So we had electronic distribution first, all those same things I mentioned before with the addition of the newspapers. We had articles in the Record Review and the Katona Lewisboro Times. There was a pretty robust Facebook initiative from the outreach teams. They all posted on their Facebook pages, their Facebook groups. They sent out emails to their personal contacts. And then in phase 2, we went with all the electronic distribution. A few things we added in phase 2, the town cable channel. What else? There were new articles in the Record Review and the Katona Lewisboro Times. And then in addition to the electronic flyer distribution via social email and email, we went out with the paper, the posting of the physical flyers, and the outreach teams did that across the hamlets. They had a sign-up sheet that they could use. And we asked them to post at a minimum at grocery stores, post offices, and town buildings. And we were able, by the end, before the virtual meetings, we got really good flyer distribution throughout town. A lot of the teams worked really, really hard and covered so many places across the town. I know that we owe a big thank you to all those people that hit the pavement, stuck up the flyers. So just thinking about all of that, putting this document out here, I just wanted to see what is missing and what we still need to do to get an idea of how much more time and work that will take. A couple things that I know we're gonna do is we're gonna have a big outreach team Zoom brainstorm session with the outreach teams and anybody else who wants to join. I'd love to have the town board members there, the liaisons, the steering committee members, whoever wants to join, see if they have any ideas of what else we can do. I want to redesign the website a little bit. We're gonna have a booth at the volunteer fair at the library, so maybe we can get some more volunteers for our outreach teams. We need a volunteer to go to the new neighbor event. We'll circle back to that at the end. Let's see. The board had mentioned at the last board meeting the mailers, getting Parks and Rec involved, maybe something with camp registration, like having flyers pop up there. The emergency text management system, using that. So what other ideas are there? And let's get them all out on the table and see how much time they might take or budget.
You just now mentioned mailers. You mean the idea of an actual physical mailing?
That's what I heard you say at the last town board meeting.
Yeah, just confirming. Yeah, I still think that's should be one option anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why don't we make I'm gonna share my screen, make a little chart here, because I think what I hope is that we have done a good job of getting everything in. There's like a free category and gonna need additional budget category. And I especially want to know what we haven't done that we should be doing that falls in the free category.
So one of the things I think both of the newspapers that we could reach could, it would be helpful to not only have something about the comprehensive plan almost as a standing feature, like a little piece in each one about, okay, this is what it's about, or this is when you can look to see the first set of goals, or, I mean, especially if we start getting product out. Now that's difficult because it takes somebody to write it, but
Does that go in the free or money category?
I think that would be in the free category. If we could get them to almost have a, where's the, update from the comprehensive plan, and have a little blurb. I think it should be, I think they often look for content. I could be wrong, but
the community events section in each one of the papers, if I remember correctly, like, what's going on in town kind of a thing. And maybe
they've had it. They have had it in there, and they've also had standalone articles that kind of like, I know right now we've probably got the 2 reporters listening to this, and they're going to write up summaries that will be in the paper next week. And the Record Review is having an article tomorrow about the last town board meeting, the discussion there, and then the discussion that our agenda for tonight. So they've had really good coverage, but hey, let's see if we can ramp it. What else, people?
We talked about something in the schools at one point, sort of a flyer into the backpacks. I remember we had that as a concept once.
Yeah, we never figured out how to actually execute that. So we've tried to engage directly with the PTOs, and they've certainly received the message, and some of them have, passed along the information in their newsletters, but they haven't really made it further than that first stage. Does anybody have contacts or connections there? Somebody in the school that we could talk to? Or an idea, maybe you don't, but do you know the right person we can talk to? Andrea, Dan?
Sadly, I'm not affiliated with the school district, so I don't really have a contact within the district. I was thinking, however, that many of our high school students and seniors need community service hours. Some of them are looking, or should be looking, for their senior seminar projects. I think it's this time of year where they take off the last so many weeks of school and they immerse themselves in some sort of project or internship or something. We might be able to contact someone in the school that knows something about that. Perhaps the principal of the high school, perhaps the head of who's in charge of the counseling center, their guidance counselors.
Okay.
Andrea, I think that's been a problem. We've been trying to get contacts to the school, and it's not very easy. And we were sort of counting on the board who.
We need an in, maybe. So maybe not you and Dan, maybe you or Dan, but if you could put your heads together with the rest of the board and see if you could come up with someone.
There's one of our board members is liaison to the school district, and I believe that I recall who that is, and I will reach out to them to see if there's somebody at the school district that they speak to.
Cool.
That may help.
We have had a similar problem getting the school to participate in the flyers and things that we wanted to hand out with the Drug Action Prevention Council.
I believe they do not put things in backpacks.
Yeah, not anymore.
Not just this school, the school districts.
Yeah.
As a matter of course. I mean, I think that's some kind of state issue.
Okay, Dan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so just to follow up on the youth theme here, a couple of thoughts. One is, I think, don't they still in the springtime, the seniors have kind of like senioritis project things where some of them actually just basically take that time and do projects, and maybe there could be something designed where they're actually doing something as part of the plan, outreach projects or something else to do with the project that gives them sort of civic credit. So
they can go door to door with the survey.
Yeah, I mean, we can come up with some ideas there. And then also thinking further down time-wise into the summer, we've got our camps and everything. And I'm wondering if there's even some kind of activity that could be, and this kind of follows also when we were at the in-person event in John Jay, somebody commented to me, we got to get the young kids in here and let them put up Post-its because they have a stake in all this too. And so I'm thinking that at the camp, maybe there could be a special activity where aren't there are some of these electronic games where you're like building a civilization or something, so you could kind of have like some activity where they're doing that, and we're kind of tying it into the plan as this, building the future for, I don't know. So, the camp and trying to get engaged through something we sort of do control, and that's the, town activities.
Maybe we can give out flyers at drop off or pick up when they zoom through in the car circle. Just a thought.
Okay, these are
I
all
think
great.
there's also some Facebook pages now. I know,
I think
that's
we've got Facebook really well covered.
even do you have the moms of?
Yes.
Okay, because that's a way into the schools too, I think that.
Yeah, we were there. There was
Okay, got it.
the people, the outreach teams definitely have the parent Facebook groups, all the different civic Facebook groups. They've got those really well covered. I think Facebook, we can safely say we're good. I mean, there's always more we can do, but that really just we need people. We need the outreach team members for that. We've heard about lawn signs, that people would love lawn signs. Those cost money. We tried to get a little initiative to have giant, big, wood pieces of wood with paint and like get a big party together to paint. And that just didn't get off the ground. There's not the volunteer people weren't really available to do that.
We do have limitations on the size of the signs, by the way. So we have to make sure it complies with our town ordinance, but yes.
Yeah, so that I think would that go in the money? Lawn signs would go in the money category for sure. In one way.
Maybe at the front of firehouses, they have those electronic signs. I don't know whether they could be used to advertise. I don't know what the limits are for what you put on those signs, but there are 3 fire departments that have 3 electronic signs that perhaps we could use, and that should be free.
Yep, we started to work on that. We did get the Lion sign participated, the one that's in next to the Cross River Shopping Center. All right, so I think let's pause here for a second. The idea, there's always more good ideas, but I guess my question to the group is, how do we execute those additional ideas? And how much time do they take? Like, let's say the first, if we want to execute those before the next in-person meeting or the next townwide meeting, then if the next meeting is in April or May, like that's really soon. So I'm not seeing anyone jumping in. So let's just keep that in our minds and pause for a second. I mean, I like that we came up with some more stuff, but I also like that a lot of it has been covered. I feel like, is it safe to say, am I getting nodding heads that like the efforts that have gone in so far have been good?
Yes. Are there specific issues that people have had?
That's a great question.
I've not heard anything.
Yes, I have not heard anything. I wasn't sure, because I haven't heard anything specific from the town board. I wasn't sure. Having a hard time taking the temperature on how you guys are feeling.
What do you mean by issues?
Like, is there something that you want us to be doing that we haven't done in terms of outreach. Is that what you mean, Charlene?
Yeah,
I don't think, we have any, we don't have any inputs that are saying it's not going well, and it's certainly been pervasive, so nothing that I know of.
And you've heard my comments about, I'm trying, I still, think about how more to engage the families with school-age children, because that seems to be an area where we're not having as much participation, which is important.
that's interesting, because I had I was on one of the meetings, and there were like 3 families, and I know because they were talking about their kids, and I thought that was pretty good.
That is good, because in my session, everybody was almost the mirror image of me, older children or empty nesters.
No,
And
there was just one other lawyer on mine.
We have the recordings, and on the virtual sessions, I think people did talk more about their family situations. But we are not recording. That is an important point to note, to the idea that we can't control the outcomes. We're not recording demographic information or, anything specific about the people that come to the meetings. So it is, we have to be careful about making assumptions about people just based on what they look like on a small Zoom screen. So I want to, we want to engage the PTOs, we want to engage the parents, we want to make sure the seniors are engaged, we want to make sure the business owners are engaged. It is no small task. So we really appreciate your being engaged, Andrea specifically, and reaching out throughout the process and saying, hey, what about this? And what about these groups? That's what we need. We need the dialogue, and we need people to raise their hands and say, hey, I'm a business owner, I'll help. We've had that, and we haven't had anybody specifically reach out and say, hey, I'm associated with the school, I'll help. So I think we definitely want that.
I'll keep pushing. I mean, I sent the survey out on my phone, like I kept it saved on my screen. And then every time I talked to somebody, I would send them the link so they could fill out the survey.
That's what we need. Yeah, it's word of mouth. A lot of it is word of mouth. So we all have to do what we can. But the momentum,
everybody has something to say. Everybody has something to say. They see myself, maybe they see Dan, whether I'm at the gym or I'm in the in Greenway, and do you have a second? Could I talk to you? And I'm like, and they'll start telling me things. Did you fill out the survey?
Yeah.
Okay, here you go.
Yes, perfect.
Off to them. So
yes.
If I could just add in,
yes.
this is anecdotal, like everything else that we're talking, or most everything else we're talking about. But just from people that I've asked if they participated in the first outreach session, most people that I ran into did not. And when I asked them why, it was because they were busy. They had something else that was happening at that time. And that's one of the reasons why I think we need to keep up the momentum and have more of these meetings, because the more meetings we have, the more people will participate. And I do think that round of seven public meetings is we're going to have a great participation, I think, when we get to the end of this.
I agree.
Sorry for interrupting.
No. And I just wanted to add, because we hadn't mentioned it explicitly, Dan made the childcare happen. He made the connection between County Children's Center, the board, and the steering committee. And having the childcare available at the in-person meeting is a huge important thing to make sure that people with children can actually come and participate on a Saturday or a weekend. So thank you for that, Dan, and to the board for approving that outside of the project budget. It's really quite reasonably, we're not talking about large sums of money here. Okay, so we're really tight on time and we haven't made any decisions. I think the outreach conversation was super important to have, and we need to keep having it. With all of that in mind, I think we can pivot to the public meeting options. So I don't think we're going to be able to make any decisions tonight. And this is probably going to be the first meeting that I'm going to say we're going to have to go over. If anybody has a hard stop I know we usually end on time, but tonight is very tricky. So I wanted to give a window into how we made the recommendation, where we ended up, where we were in terms of in-person versus virtual. What it comes down to in terms of the format of the meetings is that virtual is interesting because it does present a budgeting challenge. We had a lot of people sign up who didn't end up attending. And I think that, our drop off rate is seeming to be about 50% from round one. So what we have budget for is 80 attendees for a virtual meeting. So like if we're being conservative, 110 people signing up. But the more people we have sign up, the more staff Valerie needs to allocate to make sure the breakout rooms stay small. And then we go over budget. But then if those people don't show up, there's extra staff. It's not really necessarily efficient from a budgeting standpoint. We got the best engagement in person.
Yeah.
So looking at the results from round one, we know that in person was where we got the bulk of people attending. Then there was much smaller attendance, and there was some overlap with the 2 nights of the virtual meetings as well. So just thinking about covering the most people, doing so efficiently from a project perspective, we looked at the options that Valerie provided us with having 6 in-person Hamlet meetings and 1 townwide virtual, or on the flip of that, 6 virtual Hamlet meetings and 1 in-person townwide. And that is why we ended up where we did with making the recommendation of having everything in person in terms of the actual meetings and the workshops, and having the survey be advertised from the beginning of the round to the end, and the survey will be the virtual option, because there needs to be something virtual to ensure equity for access. But the survey, we got great engagement with the survey, and people seem to respond really well to it, and the content is exactly the same. So that's where we ended up where we are. Another tricky thing is that we were looking at the times that we had great success with the Saturday morning, not as much with the Monday and Thursday. Obviously, Saturday mornings are not good for some people. There's not really going to be a time that's good for everybody. But another thing is, if we're having meetings across the Hamlet, the reason why we ended up having recommending everything on a Saturday morning is that we want things to be consistent across the hamlets. We don't want one hamlet to say, well, it's Saturday morning for them and then Saturday afternoon for us, but Saturday afternoon is clearly not good for XYZ people. It just seems like it keeps with our mission of being fair, equal, and consistent. Our mission specifically of providing fair and equal access, that if we are going to have an in-person meeting, that it's consistent across locations. So that's where we ended up where we did, but that's working strictly within the confines of what we set out to do in the RFP, and in setting the project plan for Valerie and her team of having 6 distinct Hamlet meetings and 1 townwide meeting. But
Katie, I just want to make sure that everyone understands when we say townwide meeting, that just means because it's going to be the same exact exercise. I mean, for the most part, the same exact exercise is going to be done in each one of the Hamlet areas, which we're really going to be focusing on the goals and objectives. So the townwide would be the same thing, just if for some reason somebody from Golden's Bridge and somebody from Vista was not able to attend their individual Hamlet meetings, that they can attend this one. So that's really what the townwide is. It's not really meant to be focused on townwide, but it's going to be basically the same exercise will be done, but open to anybody that wants to attend.
Perfect. That's super helpful context. And that's great because it doubles up. It allows, you can attend in the townwide or in the Hamlet, the content will be the same. But so So here we are, everybody. Now we're circling back to the beginning of the conversation, figuring out schedule, figuring out when the meetings happen, what the meetings look like. Yeah, no small feat. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood why all the pieces that are going into this and why we landed where we did. But now I want to open it up for discussion and revisiting the idea of when, and then bringing into the discussion how. In person Saturday morning, in person Sunday evening, in person weeknight feels like kind of, was it Valerie? Did we get feedback from your team that in-person weeknights are not usually well attended?
No, I mean, they can be, I mean, we were suggesting the Saturdays just because of how many people were able to attend on a Saturday in the town.
Yeah.
We could shift to an in-person, night meeting. I mean, that's possible. Typically they start around, 7:30 and they run to like 9 o'clock. The difficulty is what night of the week is the best night to have, one of those meetings.
Yeah. I'm Larry, I'm gonna hear from the steering committee members first, and then I'm gonna come to you, Andrea. Oh, let me unmute you.
I'm sorry about that. I think like one of the first rules of community organizing, I was told, is try to have things on the same day and the same time, so people know if they miss something, they could attend the next one. So I like the idea of having them on the same dates and times. I also have to call out Andrea because I really think that's a good idea to kind of have a few meetings and then maybe pause and then come back and have a few more meetings and pause, kind of regather. If something's not going right, it gives us time to kind of reset. So I really think that's a good idea, and that maybe we should talk about incorporating that into the schedule if it works with NPV's staffing. And then I also like the idea of having maybe a different time if the formats are going to be similar for each of the Hamlet meetings and the town meeting. Maybe that last town meeting then is at a different time for people that for some reason could not attend the Saturday meetings. Maybe it's business owners or whoever. It gives them an opportunity at the end to come to a meeting at a different time where they may not have been able to participate earlier. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Charlene or Mark?
Well, that's fine, but to find a day during the week, I know I have like Tuesdays and Thursdays, I can't have any meetings, and then Mondays I have other meetings. So I think that's difficult. I mean, Saturday is Saturday. I understand about the business owners. So as Larry said, maybe we can have one, but which one on a weeknight? And even at that, it has to start late because business owners work late. So I don't think there is a clear answer. And again, I would defer to the people who are going to vote on it. And also as to the additional meetings, that has to be decided by the town board because it's more money. We've decided on the issues based on the budget, and we want to stay within the budget. Obviously, the more meetings, the better. You're going to get a few more, but it costs money. And we're not in the position to say, oh, absolutely, because I don't think that it's an absolute. So again, I would defer to the board.
Thank you, Charlene. Mark, do you have anything you want to add? Okay.
No.
I like everything I'm hearing.
I just want to make sure everyone understands that if we have the Saturday morning meetings at the same time, one day is going to be advertised as this is Golden Bridge. Another day is going to be advertised this is Walkabout. So you potentially will have people say, well, I can't make that Golden Bridge one. How am I going to participate? I'm a Golden Bridge, resident. So that's when they could either take the public survey or go to the town-wide one. That's, now technically the same exercise will be done at all different meetings, but I think it seems like it's very important to the town to have these hamlet areas. So people, feel like that they can have that exchange of ideas for people that want to discuss a particular hamlet. So, that's the only drawback of having those. So technically you are having 7 meetings and there are many different opportunities, but if you're a Golden Bridge resident, theoretically your opportunity would be the Golden Bridge meeting, the public survey, or the townwide meeting.
Mm-hmm. It's a communications challenge. So we need to make sure that the flyers, the website, everything communicating how these meetings work and what they are is clear. So I really don't want to rush that. Actually, I guess I'm throwing a plea out there. Please don't rush that, because I have to pull the volunteers together to get the flyers. I have to coordinate with the webmaster, all this stuff. Like, we don't want to be rushing our volunteers too much because they're donating their time. So just throwing that out there. I love the idea of having different times to make sure that that's what we did the first time. We wanted Saturday or Monday or Thursday or survey. We wanted options. So I know we all want to find a way to do that this time. So I think before I pass to Andrea and then Dan and Janet, maybe what we should aim to do tonight is to come up with a couple different options that then I'm going to be going to present to the board on March 13th. So then we can review those options with the board. We can send it to them next week. They'll have tons of time to look at it, and Andrea and Dan, you guys can kind of lead them in thinking about it. And then the board can make the decision, because I echo everything Charlene is saying, that we feel strongly that the recommendations we make should be in budget, but it is within the purview of the board to say, yeah, let's add in it one more so that there's 8 meetings, or whatever the case may be. With that, Andrea.
So I like the idea of, and again, I don't know if this is possible, Val, but a Sunday evening meeting, because the local business owners, the small business owners, they're working all day on Saturday. And, I know it was a struggle for them. They really found it, the ones that did show up found it very important, but they had to find someone to fill in for them. So, if it's the town-wide meeting that's on a Sunday evening, or that would be helpful to our local business owners. Evenings, everybody's exhausted. I agree with everyone on here that evening meetings during the week are very difficult. But at least maybe a Sunday evening meeting, 6:30, 7 o'clock would be very helpful, at least to the part of the community who are small business owners.
Dan, thank you.
I just wanted to react to Charlene. You're saying it should be up to us, to the board, to approve the meetings. Yes, but I'm happy if you guys come to us and say, here's the way we planned it, but geez, it'd be great if we were to add these 2 meetings. Like, we need your recommendation, that's all. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the board is like, oh wow, we can't do that, and gotta scale back or whatever, but we need a recommendation before, as opposed to us just thinking it might be necessary. That's all.
I mean, the more meetings, the better. So can we vote on a recommendation? We should have more meetings. Yeah, but it's sort of, that's a real budgetary. In my opinion, will the comprehensive plan fail if we don't have any more meetings? No, I don't think so. I think we really have in my experience, we have a very hefty outreach, and we have enough meetings to cover it. So in my opinion, that's my opinion. If we can have additional meetings, it always helps. Mm-hmm. It'll bring in more people, maybe not a lot, but to have the project work, we have enough meetings. I mean, I think we've all decided, and Katie, correct me if I'm wrong. We decided that that was a good project.
Yeah, the recommendation that we've made for round 2 is to have 6 in-person Hamlet, 1 in-person townwide, and then the survey to be the virtual option. But I think we are now trying to figure out what day and time. So I'll let Jan comments from you, and then I'm going to bring up a grid and we'll put our ideas on the grid.
Okay, quickly, I think I wanted to ask a little bit about the format of the in-person meetings, whether they are going to be kind of the open house where you can kind of show up between any time. And if it, which is what it was for the first one, if that happens, I think we should make sure that we emphasize that so that people understand they don't have to be there from 9:30 to noon or whatever, and that they can drop in.
Right.
And I think that's kind of important. I think that lessens the fear of having one Hamlet on a Saturday morning and one on a, Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, because once people realize they don't have to be there for 3 hours, I think it's a good, you might get more turnout. The second thing is, I really think I am really happy that you're saying, let's leave the survey open the whole time. I think that's really going to be effective for people who cannot make their individual Hamlet meeting.
Yeah, we saw that with round 1, that the survey was really popular. Okay, so let me share my screen and let's get our hands dirty here. So I think we're all in agreement that the 6 Hamlet meetings, and let's focus on that. The 6 Hamlet meetings should be in person. The survey will serve as the virtual option. And in terms of time of day, I think, am I hearing that it's okay for the Hamlet meetings to be Saturday morning consistently for each Hamlet, as long as the townwide meeting is on a different time and day?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And that's fine. We will have to, I mean, the difficulty is it's 6 Saturday mornings.
Mhm.
So I just need to find, 6 Saturday mornings that we can pull together enough people that don't have weddings and, and all that other stuff. I started collecting some weekends that people are available. It is easier for us to be able to staff like a morning and then an afternoon, because then I can have everybody, because basically we're identifying where people don't have anything on a Saturday, because the difficulty is with a Saturday, once you get set up and break down, most of your day is gone. Mm-hmm. So I'm just putting that out there. I mean, we will be able to find 6 Saturdays. That's not a problem. It just might take a little longer than if we had 3 Saturdays to find.
Mm-hmm. Let me phrase it this way. Does anybody feel strongly that there won't be any issues and, well, does anybody feel strongly that we should double up on Saturdays and do Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon so that there can be 3 Saturdays?
I think you might be able to do that especially with some of the smaller, I'm going to say, I don't think either Lewisboro or South Salem have a big, center, and maybe Wacabuck, so I'm not saying do all of them that way, but maybe you could do one Saturday where you have a morning, afternoon, and clear out 2 of them, or some of the smaller hamlets that are not as active, that we don't expect as much turnout from. And my guess of the two that are the least active would be South Salem and Lewisboro.
South Salem is actually our biggest outreach team.
Biggest outreach, but I'm thinking in terms
The
of
most volunteer.
controversy. Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
so put that on a morning and put Lewisboro on an afternoon is what I mean. I was just trying to think if there's a way to do
Yeah.
it that made sense.
Does anybody else?
I think
I
John
would
was
say I
of
feel
the opinion that Lewisboro wouldn't really be that big because they consider themselves very much South Salem.
There aren't a lot. We've found people aren't always sure that they live in the
Yeah.
Lewisboro hamlet. They think
I
they
grew up there. I didn't know it
South Salem.
existed until I don't know when.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jen is right. If just those two, and I think John said the same thing.
Yeah. Just the only thing is I just hate that I personally love the consistency with our mission of
Yeah.
the keeping it fair and equal. I hate to be
That's fine. I mean, we'll just, I'm just saying, like, because if we're going to start them in May,
throws
you
a
know, it might have to be September and maybe finish up in October, depending upon, because again, trying to avoid the big weekends where people won't be around. And then also making sure that I have enough staff to attend those Saturday mornings.
I have to say, although it's not something I would, lie down in front of the bulldozers, but I tend to like the idea of getting, knocking it off in 3 Saturdays and keeping it kind of close together so that, everybody, in a shorter time, everybody's sort of doing the same thing. And it's not like, oh, you did this then, and now somebody else did this, 2 months later. It's like that whole concept is happening now. And to just go easier on Valerie's work to pull it together. And I mean, I don't know if there's folks that would, really feel put out because, we didn't have a morning session, but I mean, there, this is time. We can't control every factor perfectly. I would like to see them stacked. I think that's my feeling.
What do you think, Andrea?
I see the pros and cons of either approach. I don't really have a strong opinion in either direction. I like the fact that we have a potential Sunday night option townwide where people who really want to appear in person can show up. I like that makes me happy. The Saturday meetings stacked or not stacked. I guess I'm leaning towards what Dan said. If you have like a Vista meeting 2 out of the 3 we're going to have 3. So it would be morning and afternoon. And then the third one would be some other Saturday that perhaps you could stack it with a different hamlet, do, Vista in the morning and let's say Lewisboro in the afternoon or vice versa. I don't have a problem with that, especially with the staffing issues. So yeah, I mean, I don't see too much of a downside.
Okay, thanks. Kirsten, you had your hand raised?
I did. And speaking as a former LBA parent, I would be a little disheartened if I saw all these activities happening Saturday at 9 when I'm schlepping my child to a baseball diamond somewhere. And I'm just boxed out of all these meetings. So having the stacked more choices during a day, I can have that flexibility and possibly go to more meetings.
Yeah, and if we do it kind of location, like the first Saturday, one of the Saturdays is Lewisboro and Vista. People who live in that general, like that's still pretty close together. So if you can't go to the morning and you miss the Vista, but you can go to the afternoon and you can go to the Lewisboro, you're still in the general region. Same with like South Salem and Walkabuck and Cross River and Golden's Bridge. But the idea is everybody gets their own hamlet forum where they can discuss the things that are distinct to the hamlet.
What about if we actually combined just 2 hamlets, right? So let's just say you had a Lewisboro and Vista. right? So people could come in the morning or come in the afternoon to talk about Lewisboro or Vista, right? Because the thought of the way these meetings are going to be arranged, we're going to have town-wide goals, town-wide objectives. Then we're going to ask people not only to provide like what their thoughts are on the town-wide goals and objectives, but then what in their community, their individual hamlet areas could then also fall under those particular goals or objectives or help support those particular goals or objectives, right? So then we can start identifying more specifics for the hamlet areas. So, you know, that's another option to consider, and then people could go to either one of those, you know, on a
That could work. That could totally work, because I'm in Lewisboro and I feel like I'm part of Vista, and so you know, we're very much intertwined, and that would be I think that would be a really good thing to do Vista and Lewisboro at the same time. Helps Val out, and you know.
And then would it be possible then that you're having a total of 6, right? So could you have 2, which were both, you know, Vista and Lewisboro? One is a Saturday morning, one's a Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
And then the whole thing about, you know, I'm always out in the morning goes away. So yeah, that sounds almost ideal then.
Wait, talk that through. So one Saturday would be, Valerie, can you just lay that out?
Sure. So like one Saturday could be a Vista and Lewisboro Saturday. So you have a session in Vista and Lewisboro, and then we have another one in the afternoon in Vista and Lewisboro. And we can decide whether we change locations or whether we, you know, because we could change locations, one in Vista, one in Lewisboro, but then still have anybody can come from Lewisboro or Vista. And then we could also do something similar for like Walkabuck and South Salem. But then when you get to Cross River and Golden's Bridge, we should maybe separate those two, or we could have, you know, that way, because I think because they're a little bit more geographically separated, as opposed to, not that Walkabuck and South Salem are, but they kind of blend a little bit, you know, in terms of when you're driving from one area to another.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's just an option to consider. And then that way that might open up a little bit more opportunities for people to participate.
Committee members, does that feel comfortable to you guys? That concept? I think as long as Cross River and Golden's Bridge stay separate, and like the locations change so that each hamlet has a meeting inside of it.
Right. And then clearly, if somebody can't come to the Cross River or Golden's Bridge, they have the option of coming to the town wide, or, you know, participate in the public survey.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Mark, question or comment?
Yeah, just to speak a little bit about the mechanics of the meetings and collecting community response. The very successful meeting we had in the high school was somewhat self-directed, where people went from stand to stand, and they, at their discretion, they wrote their comments on a Post-it note, and then we collected and organized that information after the fact. So I'm always wondering if, because it's not like a structured meeting where we're giving people the microphone, they're signing up, and there's guidance and so forth. I mean, it's really an event to you know, try to focus their interest in responding. So could this be?
Valerie? That's going to be accurate for this round too.
Well, that's what our thought was, because I think the concern has been in the past that, you know, if you can have it a very structured meeting, but then you have the situation of somebody dominating and other people not feeling like they can just express their thoughts and take their time, and they have to be at the beginning of the meeting, you know, so that's why it allows for more options for people.
Yeah, we got really good feedback on that. Sorry, continue, Mark.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering why, just to, you know, take a fresh look at this, why it needs to be structured on a date, on a time at all, other than using that as, you know, protecting. It's almost like if you want to get out, you know, a response, you say, well, what time are you going to be there, and so forth. But could we have a setup in town hall, in the lobby, or a room where, and then just advertise that come stop by, give your response, and we could have pamphlets, information, almost like permanent stands there. And somebody, we could divide the task among committee members to collect the Post-it notes periodically, refresh the, the boards, and just people can stop in and give their comment 9 to 5, without it being restricted to a date and a time. I mean, does that work, Valerie? I don't.
I think that's the virtual survey, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of, just, we could even just, I mean, we could even station and have somebody here like all day long, right? I mean, and we could, if you want to, I mean, because we provided a budget assuming this, the individual hamlet meetings. But if for some reason you want to have like basically us rotating to different areas within the town, and then just structuring that in-person meeting so that if for some reason somebody from Golden's Bridge happens to be in Vista and that's the time that they're able to come, that they can come and then they can still provide information on Golden's Bridge, that's fine too. And we can definitely structure it so that people understand that this is about their hamlet, their thoughts. I just know that was something of, a concern to the town of Lewisboro, is having these individual hamlet meetings. But if we feel that, offering more meetings in different areas throughout the town, but allowing anybody to come whenever they want to is more beneficial to the town, we can do that as well. And still keep it kind of focused on hamlet areas by asking people, what hamlet are you responding to? And we can provide information on the different hamlets at the meetings as well.
I think come September, we'll have a better handle on whether we're going to need additional meetings. I think it's difficult to predict at this point, and I personally would be open to additional meetings, but I think by September, we should have a good handle on people's willingness to participate, and we'll get feedback, because we're always going to get feedback. I need another meeting. I didn't have an opportunity, we'll know by then, after having several opportunities to have meetings, who, the feedback from the community will dictate that additional meetings are necessary by then.
That's a great point. We don't have to decide now. We can always add them later.
No, that's true. I think when you go to advertise, though, we are going to want to set,
yes,
if you're going to do individual hamlet meetings, we need to set those individual hamlet meeting dates as soon as you go out. Because if people see only a couple advertised, they're going to say, what about my hamlet area?
Yeah, they need to all be advertised at once.
Yes.
Larry?
I do think there is value to having like a separate time or meeting for each of the hamlets versus having like kind of a round robin thing where you just show up and I say that because in my experience, once you have people of like minds or from a neighborhood or an area together, and they start talking about things that they may not have thought of, that might be specific to their hamlet or to their geography. Whereas if you have people from across the town, like a townwide meeting, those specific needs maybe of a certain geography or neighborhood might not really come out in that neighbor to neighbor, resident to resident, business owner to business owner conversation that you'd get when you have all people from a similar geography together. So that would be my input on having this distinct hamlet meetings versus 6 or 7 or 3 or whatever it is, townwide meetings, to have like to really break it out into those hamlets as a specific time and place.
I agree. That's how we sort of structured it.
Right.
And that's how we publicized it. And now to walk back on something like that, I think it would be confusing to the public.
I agree completely. And I know a lot of people are very excited and patiently waiting for the hamlet specific meetings. I'm just doing this in the background to make this, I think I'm capturing what we've talked about so far, but Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, am I understanding correctly then these hamlet meetings will, what I heard is they'll be sort of similar to the in-person John Jay meeting with, questions and posted boards and things like that. And in that meeting, and I'm sure these meetings, people probably expected something different. They probably expected a meeting where people raise their hand and say things, and there's a dialogue and like that kind of a meeting, which is okay. I'm wondering then, or I'm thinking that, running it as we're planning here is probably a good exercise anyway first, but then once we've collected that data, processed it, and created kind of some rough collation of all that to feed it back to the public, at some point they're going to want to have meetings that are more recognizable to them, that involve people actually talking to each other. That could be, so if we can get these meetings done like before the summer, and then be just working to craft some of those documents so that people can see what came in, or in whatever format it's supposed to be in, then it would be great to look towards further meetings where there's actually people interacting and having that as a basis for it.
Yeah, I have to agree with Dan on that. People are looking for that party planning session where everybody gets together, like, almost like they're planning a gala, and they have their input, and these are good ideas and these are bad ideas. They want to have a conversation. This information collecting is very, very important, but some of the feedback that I've been getting is that they're looking forward to a conversation.
Right. So that's a good point. So the first meeting was very much like, we just need your feedback. The second meeting is going to be a little bit more of, to some extent, a conversation in terms of, we're going to have some very concrete, very specific goals and objectives that people are going to be reviewing and weighing in on. And then also identifying how their particular hamlet area could, how those goals and objectives fit within their hamlet area, and what are some things within the hamlet area that could be changed in order to assist with those goals and objectives. So we can structure it even as like, breakout sessions to some extent, in terms of, people coming to a table and sitting down and discussing. But if we do something like that, you're going to have a meeting that starts at like 9:30 and people attend. And then, like you could have like one session at 9:30, one session at 10:30 or something, but it's a little bit more difficult to have like an open house with that forum and having people come sit down and have like that discussion. If you're going to have another round of meetings to have that discussion, I think we would have to add in more meetings into the comprehensive plan process, because the third round of meetings is actually going to be on the comprehensive plan document and the zoning itself.
Can I get the group's feedback? Did I capture what we've talked about so far on here correctly so far? Oh, I'm sorry, the font is small. That I can change. Just say something out loud if something is wrong. And I think it sounds like also.
Yeah, and I just want to comment on the conversations. I did find in the in-person that, first of all, reading some of the other comments, I ended up talking with some other people about those comments and about my comments and about reactions.
Yes.
So there was that, while it wasn't a meeting where you stood up and sort of talked to the whole room, there were conversations definitely going on inside the in-person meetings.
Yes.
that helped improve the product, I think.
Right. And there was those tables that we had people sitting at tables just talking amongst each other as well. And so we can help, like we can set up the room so that there is that type of ability for people to have that kind of dialogue.
The only problem that I saw with that in comparison to the virtual meetings was that in the virtual meetings, you had the person that was in each room and they were taking down the information, just like, we're doing tonight with Katie, and you actually saw your input being recorded somewhere. Whereas the in-person meeting, Some of the feedback that I received was that they didn't know how their feedback was being taken in or recorded because they couldn't physically see it being recorded anywhere. Sticky notes, things were falling on the floor. Does, like, if an idea was already up there, was it important to put like 3 stickies that said the same thing, or was one sticky saying enough?
Yeah.
Was it going to get more relevance if 3 people put up the same idea, or was it going to get the, so that was kind of the problem. I don't want to say problem, that was the feedback that I got from the in-person meeting. You know, they can sit down and talk in groups at a table amongst themselves, but that in no way to them, they could see that being recorded or taken into consideration by the people who are, you know, who are creating the master plan. So that was the feedback that I received. So it was a little confusing for them to that end.
No, and I understand. I mean, yes, that was good. That's good feedback. And I understand, like, you know, why some people would worry about that. I will say, I just sent to Kirsten this morning. We took photos of every one of the posters, so that in high resolution, so that you can actually zoom in on all the posters. And then we have summaries of all the different posters and the main ideas. So that's all going to be posted on the internet, you know, within the next few days. But what we can do, and I've heard your feedback tonight, so the next meeting we can come up with some options that this committee might want to consider in terms of format. So we can still do the morning and afternoon, but maybe we can talk about some potential formats that would allow for more of that discussion and dialogue.
In terms of timing, so the other benefit of stacking on Saturdays is because we only have 3 Saturdays. We don't have to rush to start in April. So I know that the discussion earlier was like, let's capitalize on some of the momentum we have and not push everything to the fall. What if we did Saturday number 1 in either late or mid-May, and then do Saturday, actually, I guess we could do late, now we have Memorial Day. So mid-May, before Memorial Day, and then the first 2 weekends in June. I mean, obviously this has to work for Valerie and her team, but the idea being that if the first meeting isn't until mid-May, that does give us March to do informational outreach, get on the same page with the full town board, April to do save the dates and or start getting out information, and basically April and May for advertising. I think we can work with that. I mean, it's definitely going to be tight, and some of these additional things that need to be done, we just need all hands on deck. We need to engage our volunteers, we need to engage the full town board, we need to engage the steering committee. We need everybody to help expand our outreach a little bit. But if we think we're up for it, does May and June sound doable to everybody for the Hamlet meetings? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, let me stop sharing. I need to see more enthusiastic nodding heads. Yes, May and June. Okay. And then maybe that is a good opportunity, instead of going into late June or July, maybe we say, well, I'm not sure. How do we feel about that? The townwide meeting being in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay for there to be that space there? And the survey being open the whole time? The only thing I worry about is if someone can't make one of the meetings, then they feel like they have to wait all the way to the fall.
Oh, well, we could do the townwide meeting was going to be on a Sunday though, right?
Yeah.
So we could, right. So I think Sundays are going to be easier to find staff, like, because Saturdays in the spring tend to be a lot of weddings. So I think finding a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening, I think will be easier.
Perfect. Okay. Problem solved. And then that gives us the summer to evaluate and hear feedback. And if people are saying, I didn't get a chance, I really want to participate, then the town board will have the opportunity to say, hey, we want to do another meeting or 2 in the fall.
Yes.
and there's more time in between then to advertise more if we need to.
Right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So Katie, in the next,
did it.
Katie, I'm gonna provide, I'll put together some ideas, because also with the time, the actual time itself, you know, if we wanna, now that we're doing back to back, if you wanna do like, you
Right.
know, you can decide whether you want 9:30 or if you want 10 or 10:30, you know what I mean? Depending upon, I know the concern was the morning, if kids have soccer practice or, you know, so we could shift that, and one could be like a later afternoon. So that's something that the town board can decide on the timing. The other thing, what I'll do is I'll put together some ideas on potential format. So, and with the idea, with the concept in mind that we're going to try to have a little bit more of that dialogue, similar to what took place in the breakout rooms. And we can absolutely do that, because we can even have somebody stationed at a table and have people kind of rotate to the different tables and then actually talk to, you know, a facilitator, and that facilitator can make notes. I mean, we were thinking of not doing Post-its next time, but actually maybe having people identify things on maps and stuff. So, so we can talk about different options to make it a little bit more of a, for people to have a little bit more of a dialogue.
I think either or would be wonderful if we can, because I know people really liked the sort of ease of independence and
Right.
get out really fast, and some people wanted more. So if we can offer both of those options,
Yeah, we can do like a couple
Yeah.
different exercises. Right, exactly.
yeah, the more variety, the better. The more
Yeah.
it gets more and more people involved.
Okay.
Okay, let me look. I thank you for bearing with us tonight, everybody. I know that we're almost a half an hour over, and I apologize for that, but we did it. We came to a solution. I'm going to share it one more time. I just want to make sure there's space. Is everybody feeling okay about what we came up with here? Let me get it up back up. Okay. And so let me just look at the agenda. Any outstanding questions for Valerie and her team? Andrea and Dan, are you guys going to be at the new resident social on February 26th? You are? Okay. Would you mind spreading the word about the comprehensive plan for us?
Sure. Is there anything that you want? No, there's nothing to hand out yet because we don't have new flyers or anything. Yeah, I don't have a problem. You just want me to direct them to the page on the town website. This is great. I can print some of these out. Well,
yeah, so these are just
that's
drafts.
lots of yellow. I don't know if my printer's going to handle it, but
I know that's the only thing. This one is more manageable.
That one's a little better.
Yeah, they can be, the colors can be changed, but we wanted to come up with something that's like that we can post like in March. I love that we have some space because we don't have to start advertising the next meetings in March. We can post these up around town just to kind of help get people up to speed on like, what is this project and why are we doing it? But these would be a great thing to print out and bring to a meeting like that. And actually Kirsten can print some, we can work on the colors and the printing expenses and make sure.
Let me know whoever needs copies specifically for that event or any other postings you're doing, and we'll.
Yeah,
we'll
some of
connect
the town board members are supposed to be there. We have some sort of walk around at 3 o'clock. And then we have this event at 4 o'clock. So.
Okay. I mean, I didn't mean to cut anybody off. If someone, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to attend, I can. It's a Sunday, right? It's this Sunday. Yeah, this Sunday's okay. Where is it going to be?
On a true.
On a true 3 o'clock?
4.
4?
I can get you all the info, but that would be great. Just for us to have a presence there that way. I mean, I'm sure Andrea is capable of doing it also.
Yeah, no, we were all at the last meeting,
Yeah, Charlene represented us in October.
yeah, and Andrea was there, everybody was there.
All right, let's do it. The more the merrier. Anything else the other action items are covered. Oh, I have one thing I need to ask. So, Dan and Andrea, this is for you. So the webmaster has been so wonderful. Like she makes changes to our website. She posts stuff. I always try to keep everything like one email request, but then inevitably something comes up and I have to ask again. I really don't want to be a drain on her time in terms of continually posting, since this project, we've been posting stuff for like 2 years now. But I do think that we've gotten some feedback that a little bit of a redesign of our page, like making things more tabbed on the left side and like how to navigate this page on the right, like it's probably a couple hours worth of work. So you don't have to answer this right now, but I just want to, I don't want to go rogue and ask her to do that without getting input from the board first. Is that necessary? Should we do it? Is it okay for her to do it? You know, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're trying to be reasonable about, we certainly don't want to be a drain on anyone's resources. We want to do things as independently as possible, but the website is something that we don't have direct control.
I mean, you know, I'm sure it'd be nice to have it done yesterday, but I mean, if timing is a thing. If she can kind of phase it out, so it's not, you know, all doesn't have to
All at once.
go at it, yeah, all at once, then that would probably be helpful, maybe.
Sure. Okay, we can circle back on that offline, but just throwing that out there. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Anybody have any thoughts or comments? Okay, we'll let you all go. We'll follow up.
Katie, thank you for all the work you've put in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
meeting.
Thank you so much. Sorry it went over. My pleasure to be coordinating everything. Thank you all for the work you're doing, and for anyone who's still listening, thank you so much for your engagement and for being involved in this process. And everybody I thanked at the beginning, this process would not function without all of the people and the volunteers involved. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to everyone here. All right, well, I'll follow up over email, and our next meeting is scheduled for March 20th. And yeah, we'll follow up, and that's a good point. I just got to chat. We're going to need to schedule a big brainstorm session with the outreach teams. I think the best way to do that is use a scheduling survey, so I can send that out to everybody and just pick a date that works for the most people possible. Okay, well, thank you so much. And board members, I'll see you on the 13th. I'll be there via Zoom, but I will see you on the 13th.
Great.
Okay, thank you guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Can we
Thanks, Katie.
get a vote on the December 19th, 2022 minutes?
Yes, sorry about that. I motion to approve the meeting minutes from December as submitted.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for not letting me forget.
And who's going to adjourn?
Okay, I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. We did it. Yay. Take care, everybody. Bye.
You too.